On the night before my daughter's wedding, I begged her to come to the hospital because I was being rushed in for emergency surgery. She told me I was too dramatic and hung up. The next time she saw me, the life she thought was hers was already gone. Before we continue, like this video, drop a shout out and let us know where you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this. The doctor's words fell like a hammer. You need to be admitted immediately. We'll schedule the surgery for tomorrow morning. It can't wait. For a moment, I just sat there on the cold examination bed, staring at his lips moving. The word immediately rattled in my skull like loose change. I had come in expecting another lecture about blood pressure, another reminder to cut back on stress. Instead, I was being told I might not make it to next week if they didn't go inside my chest by sunrise. 0. The nurse handed me papers, her face kind but brisk, the way hospital staff always are. Sign here. We'll get you to a room and start prepping. As they wheeled me toward admission, fluorescent lights flashing past above me, a thought pierced through the fog. She needs to know. I reached for my phone. My hands were trembling, but not from fear. Not yet. I dialed her number. My daughter, my only child. Tomorrow was supposed to be her day. The day she walked down the aisle in the dress I paid for, in the hall I booked, with the flowers I'd ordered weeks in advance. She answered on the third ring. Her voice rushed, distracted. Dad, I'm in the middle of something. Can this wait? No, sweetheart, I said, forcing calm into my voice. Listen carefully. The doctors, they're admitting me now. Emergency surgery. Tomorrow morning. Silence on the line. For a flicker of a second, I thought I'd hear panic, or at least concern. But instead came a sigh, long, sharp, annoyed. Dad, really? On the night before my wedding? Do you have any idea how stressful this is already? You're not the first person to have surgery. Stop with the dramatics. I can't come. My grip on the phone tightened until my knuckles burned. I don't need you for long, I said, my voice cracking despite myself. Just tonight. Just to see you. I don't. Dad, please. She cut me off, irritation dripping from every word. If I come running every time you want attention, tomorrow will be ruined. Don't do this to me. I'll see you after the honeymoon. And then the line went dead. For a moment, I thought the monitor beside me would betray me, screaming out the truth of what her words had done to my heart. But no, it just kept its steady, mechanical rhythm, mocking me with its indifference. Shame washed over me, thick and suffocating. What kind of daughter had I raised? How did she turn out like this? So cold, so ungrateful, so blind to the hands that built her world brick by brick. I thought of the accounts I had drained for her wedding, the retirement I'd gambled away so she could have the venue she wanted, the custom gown, the caterers who charged more than I once earned in a month. Every decision she made, I funded. Every whim, I indulged. And now, when all I asked for was a single night of comfort on the eve of a surgery that might decide my life or death, she had no time. I closed my eyes, and for the first time in years, I felt ashamed, not of her, but of myself. Ashamed that I had poured every ounce of my being into raising a daughter who could look at her father's mortality and see only inconvenience. As the nurse pushed me into the ward, I turned my face to the ceiling and swallowed the bitterness burning in my throat. She would have her wedding tomorrow. She would have her laughter, her photographs, her memories. But I knew then, with a clarity sharper than any scalpel, that when she returned from her honeymoon, the life she thought she had built on my shoulders would no longer be hers. They prepped me through the night. Tubes, injections, clipped wires. The antiseptic smell of the ward clung to everything. I didn't sleep. My body begged for rest, but my mind refused. It replayed her voice over and over, dismissive, impatient, cold. When dawn broke, instead of watching my daughter walk down the aisle, I was being wheeled into a sterile operating room. Lights above me, bright as suns. The surgeon's masked face bending over mine. His words a blur of procedure and reassurance. I closed my eyes, but instead of praying for myself, I found I was thinking about her wedding. The dress I had paid for. The flowers. The music. Somewhere across town, while they cut into me, violins would be playing, champagne would be pouring, laughter would be echoing off marble walls I had rented with money I could no longer afford to spare. The irony was bitter in my mouth. Hours later, when I woke groggy and weak, the nurse smiled kindly. The surgery went well. You'll need rest. Don't strain yourself. Rest. That's all I could do as the day unfolded without me. I lay there in silence, my mind drifting to the images I could only imagine. Her smile for the cameras, the guests raising glasses, her groom kissing her hand like a prize won. All while the man who paid for it all was left unseen, unmentioned, forgotten in a hospital bed. No seat reserved for me. No father-daughter dance. Not even a whispered excuse to the guests. I reached for my phone once. Foolishly, I thought maybe there would be a message waiting. A text. A photograph. A thank you, Dad. There was nothing. Not even a missed call. The shame that had burned in me the night before hardened into something else. Something colder. I had thought shame was the worst of it, believing I had failed as a father. But shame transformed, slowly, into resolve. Into clarity. If she could cut me out so easily, then she had taught me something valuable. Family is not about blood, not about promises, not about sacrifices made in silence. Family is about choice. And she had chosen. When the nurse helped me sit up and sip water, I asked for a pen and paper. My hand still shook from anesthesia, but I wrote. Not to her. She didn't deserve words from me anymore. No, I wrote instructions. To my lawyer. To my bank. To the broker handling the house deed I had signed into her name. By the time she returned from her honeymoon, she would not be returning to her home. She would be returning to mine. A house stripped back from the ungrateful, a reminder that foundations built on betrayal cannot stand. I folded the note carefully. My chest ached from the incision, but inside, my heart felt steadier than it had in years. The surgery had mended my body, but her betrayal had sharpened my soul. The days after the surgery blurred together in a haze of recovery. Meals delivered on plastic trays, the beeping of monitors, the steady shuffle of nurses moving from room to room. But even as my body struggled to heal, my mind was sharper than ever. They were gone, off on their honeymoon, smiling in photographs, clinking glasses, posting captions about love and new beginnings. I didn't need to see the pictures, but I knew they existed. People like them always make sure the world is watching. And while they celebrated, I worked. The first call was to my lawyer, a man who had known me for decades, through wills and contracts, through the painful paperwork of my wife's passing. When I told him what I wanted, he hesitated only once. Are you sure, Richard? This is decisive. Yes, I said, my voice firm despite the rasp of recovery. I am more certain about this than anything in my life. The second call was to the bank. I still controlled the accounts, of course. I had only shifted things to make her wedding possible. It didn't take long to rearrange the balances, to pull back what was left, to redirect funds into places she wouldn't even know existed. Every payment, every card she carried was tied to me. Without me, her wallet was just a collection of empty promises. And then the house. Ah, the house. The one she had paraded through with her fiancé, showing him the marble countertops, the wide windows, the manicured lawn, all with a smug smile that said my father made this happen. She believed it was hers. She believed my signature had been the final step. She never noticed the clause I'd kept. The quiet line that said ownership would not transfer fully until after a probationary period, one she had not yet passed. My lawyer had tried to convince me otherwise, but I insisted. A safety net, I told him at the time. For her protection. No, not for hers. For mine. While she sipped cocktails on a beach, I signed the reversal papers from my hospital bed. The house was mine again. Not hers. Not theirs. I pictured the moment. Their return from paradise. The cab pulling up, their luggage spilling onto the driveway. Her laughter echoing, his hand on her back. And then, the key not fitting. The locks changed. The realization that the home she thought was hers was nothing more than a mirage, dissolved by the stroke of a pen. I didn't do it out of rage. Rage passes. This was colder. Cleaner. A lesson carved in stone. Each day I grew stronger. The doctors said my recovery was remarkable, though they didn't know what fueled it. It wasn't the medicine, not the surgery. It was the clarity, the knowledge that for the first time in my life, I wasn't giving, I was taking back. And as the sun set each evening, I imagined the look on her face when she returned. Shock, confusion, maybe even a hint of fear. She had chosen to abandon me in my hour of need. Now she would learn what it felt like to be abandoned when she needed me most. I was home by the time they returned. My recovery had gone well, better than expected, and the doctors released me with strict instructions to rest. but rest was the last thing on my mind. I waited in the quiet of my own house, the house she had paraded as hers, for the storm to arrive. The first sign was the sound of a cab pulling up, luggage wheels clattering against the driveway. Laughter. I stood by the window, just out of sight, and watched. She looked radiant, still glowing from the sun of some tropical beach. Her husband strutted beside her, carrying nothing, of course, just walking as though the world owed him space. She reached into her bag, pulled out the keys I had once given her with trembling pride, and slid one into the door. Click. Resistance. She frowned, tried again. The key wouldn't turn. She twisted harder, the smile slipping from her face. That's strange, I heard her say. Her husband stepped up, trying his own copy. Same result. I could almost taste their confusion. Minutes later came the knock. Firm. Impatient. Dad? Are you inside? Something's wrong with the locks. I didn't answer. I sat in my chair, calm, listening as the knocks turned to banging. Her voice rose, irritation spilling into panic. Dad, open the door. This is our house. Her words made me smile, a bitter, cold smile. Ours? No, child. Not anymore. I let them stew outside for a good half hour before I opened the door. Slowly, quietly, I stood in the frame, still pale from surgery but upright, steady. The look on her face was priceless. Shock first, then relief, then confusion. Dad, thank God. The keys aren't working. Did something happen while we were gone? I met her eyes, and for once, I didn't flinch. Yes, I said. My voice was flat, deliberate. Something happened. Her husband spoke up, irritation etched across his face. Look, just get the locks fixed, all right? We've been traveling all day. He tried to brush past me. I didn't move. This isn't your home. The words froze them both. What do you mean? She asked, her laugh nervous, disbelieving. Dad, stop. This is our house. You signed it over to me. I held her gaze, unblinking. Not anymore. The deed is in my name again. I reversed it while you were gone. Silence. The kind that sucks the air out of everything around it. Her face was drained of color. Her husband swore under his breath. And then the anger came. Hot, desperate. You can't do that, she snapped. You promised. No. I cut her off, my tone sharper than a blade. I promised you nothing. I gave you everything. And when I needed just one thing in return. One moment, you chose not to come. Her lips parted, but no words came. I could see the fight drain from her as the truth settled in. I leaned forward, my voice low, steady, lethal. I raised you better than this. Or at least, I thought I did. But I see now. I raised someone who can look at her father's pain and call it drama. Someone who can walk down an aisle in a gown I paid for while her father lay cut open in a hospital bed. Tell me, what kind of daughter does that make you? Her eyes filled, but I felt nothing. No pity, no softness, only a strange, hollow peace. I stepped aside, pointing to their luggage still scattered on the driveway. Take your things and go. You'll find the credit cards canceled, the accounts empty. From now on, you'll live on what you and your husband can earn, not on me. I watched them gather their bags in silence. The neighbors peeked from behind curtains, whispers spreading already. The proud bride returning from honeymoon, locked out of the palace she thought was hers. As their cab pulled away, I sat back in my chair, exhaling for the first time in weeks. My chest ached, but it wasn't the incision, it was released. She had chosen her path. And now, so have I? The next morning, the street was quieter. Their cab had come and gone, leaving behind nothing but tire marks and a scattering of dead leaves across the driveway. I made myself coffee, black and bitter, and drank it by the window where I had once watched her play as a child. There was no joy in what I'd done, only a deep, steady calm. For the first time in years, I felt unburdened. By noon, the calls began. First, my phone buzzed with her number. I let it ring until it stopped. Then came the messages. Long paragraphs of shock and rage, mixed with pleas. Dad, how could you? Dad, this isn't fair. Dad, you can't do this to us. I didn't answer. That evening, a neighbor mentioned seeing them arguing in the street. Their cab had dropped them at a cheap motel on the edge of town. I pictured her face, pale with disbelief, as reality set in. For the first time in her life, she was tasting without. The financial collapse was quicker than I expected. By the third day, I received a notice from the bank confirming that her joint account had been closed, the card suspended. I imagined the moment she tried to pay for dinner with her new husband and the card was declined. That hot flush of embarrassment, the sideways glances from strangers. By the end of the week, she came to the house again. Alone this time. Her knock was softer, hesitant. "Dad." She called through the door, her voice breaking. "Please. I didn't mean it like that. I was just stressed. You know I love you." I stood behind the door, listening, but I didn't open it. Not because I didn't hear the crack in her voice, but because I remembered the coldness in mine when I had asked for her presence in the hospital. She had called my plea drama. She had called my fear an inconvenience. Now she knew what it was to be inconvenienced. Days turned into weeks. They moved from the motel to a cramped apartment above a convenience store. Word reached me through the grapevine. Neighbors talk, people whisper. Her husband struggled to find work. His charm didn't pay bills. She had to take a job she once sneered at when her classmates did the same. I never confronted them. I never gloated. I didn't need to. The silence did the work for me. One evening, I sat on the porch watching the sunset. The air was cool, the sky painted in reds and golds. For the first time in years, my heart felt steady. I thought of my wife, gone too soon. I wondered what she would have thought of the woman our daughter had become. A pang of guilt touched me, but I let it pass. I had raised her with every ounce of love I had. What she chose to do with it was her burden, not mine. And as the shadows lengthened, I realized something. Revenge wasn't fire. It wasn't rage. It was cold, quiet, a door closing and staying closed. I sipped the last of my coffee, and in the silence of my house, I finally felt free. The silence stretched for weeks. She tried calling. She tried messaging. At first, it was anger. "You can't just cut me off like this. After everything I've done to make you proud." Then it was bargaining. "Dad, just let us stay in the house for a little while. We'll pay rent. We'll prove ourselves." Finally, it was begging. "Please. I can't do this without you. I need you. I miss you." But I answered none of them. One evening, just after dusk, the doorbell rang. When I opened it, she was standing there, disheveled, her eyes rimmed red from crying. She looked nothing like the glowing bride who had dismissed me as dramatic weeks before. She looked like a child again, lost, frightened, desperate for help. "Dad," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Please, let me in." I studied her for a long moment. The daughter I had raised, the one I had poured my life into, stood before me like a stranger. My chest ached, not from the surgery, but from something deeper. "You had your chance," I said finally. My voice was quiet, even, stripped of anger. "I asked for one night. Just one. And you chose not to come." Tears spilled down her cheeks. I didn't mean it. I was stressed. "It was my wedding, Dad. You can't hold that against me forever." But I shook my head slowly. "It wasn't stress that made you say those words. It was truth. Stress doesn't create cruelty, it reveals it." She reached for my hand, but I pulled it back. The space between us widened into a chasm no apology could bridge. "You raised me better than this," she sobbed. "Please don't turn your back on me now." I felt the weight of her words, but I also felt the memory of lying in that hospital bed, alone, waiting for her, knowing she would never come. That memory was heavier than her tears. "You turned your back on me first," I said. Her sobs echoed into the night as she stumbled down the steps, disappearing into the shadows. I closed the door behind her and leaned against it, my body heavy, my soul heavier still. For a moment, I thought I might break, that the father in me might claw his way out, demand I run after her, cradle her, forgive her. But then I remembered, forgiveness had been my curse all along. It had enabled, excused, blinded me. This coldness, was freedom. She would survive, or she wouldn't, but she would do it without me. And in that realization, I finally understood, revenge was not about destruction. It was about detachment. It was about teaching the lesson life had failed to teach. And life, I knew, was only beginning to teach her. If you enjoyed this video, like, share your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe. Thank you for watching.